Welcome to the Main and Local Podcast, Episode 8. This episode was a live stream we did on Facebook with Aaron, Sam, Tara, and Emily, and our guest was Athena Miner with the Ohio County Hospital. She was there to discuss the new COVID-19 vaccine. We thought this was pretty informative, and we hope you enjoy it.
So, Sam?
Definitely a lot to cover with that, but we do want to thank Athena for being here with us tonight and introduce her. If you would like to introduce yourself to those watching, if they're not familiar with you, and your position.
Yes, my name is Athena Miner, and I am the Chief Nursing and Clinical Officer at Ohio County Healthcare here at Ohio County. Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, we're happy to have you here tonight. And Aaron, I didn't mean to cut in there, but
you have been dealing with COVID even before the vaccine, I'm sure.
Yes, it's been a
long
year. Absolutely. We've had quite a bit of patients that have come through, and in the community, we've seen the results of COVID in our community. So we've been treating patients all along. Absolutely.
And now with the talk of the new vaccine coming through, obviously this is something we've been waiting for a long time. And there are two different kinds that we hear about, or brands. We hear about Moderna and Pfizer. And what can you tell us, because I don't really know the difference between the two, for example.
The main
microchip.
Yeah, is that what it is? The main difference is because they're both messenger RNA type vaccines that are out. So the mechanism of action is about the same with both of them. There are a few differences in the trials as to who had the more severe side effects with which shot, but most of it is pretty similar. The biggest difference is that if you get Moderna, your second dose, both of them are a 2-shot vaccine, and your second dose needs to be in 28 days, 4 weeks from your first dose. If you get the Pfizer, it's 21 days, 3 weeks from your first dose. What's also important to know is that you don't want to mix the two. Whatever brand you start with, then you need to get your booster dose from that brand as well.
Did not know that.
No, that is good to know. And is there any reason that there's a 7-day difference between the two, or is there one that's recommended more than the other? Or
no, it's the storage that makes the difference. The Pfizer vaccine has to be stored in sub-zero degree freezers, very difficult to keep. And so most of that vaccine is being shipped to the larger facilities that have the equipment to keep it in stock safely. Moderna, it can stay in a regular freezer. It doesn't have to be stored as cold as the Pfizer vaccine does. As far as the mechanism of action, it's about the same. It's just how they trialed the vaccine, and they determine when they need the booster shot to create the maximum efficacy.
So what about... I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm just curious about that booster shot and the timing on that. Like, what happens if more than 28 days elapse? Are you screwed? Do you have to start all over? Or
Well, it's recommended that you get it on that 28th day if at all possible. No, if you for some reason had to miss that, get it as soon as possible. You do want the booster shot. The way the vaccine works is that it develops spike proteins in your cells. It doesn't go into the DNA. It just stays in the mitochondria of the cell. And so that helps you form antibodies. It gives you kind of an instruction to help your body build antibodies for this vaccine and have a memory for it. And the efficacy, as long as it lasts, is potentiated by what the ingredients are in the two vaccines. And they have different ingredients, even though the mechanism of action is the same. So they just react to that cell a little bit earlier in the Pfizer. And so they want that booster shot to be given at the right time so it can complete the instruction map. And it's the same with the Moderna. As they trialed that vaccine, it they time out what the difference is and how that cell responds to the vaccine, and the best time to give that booster shot to kind of allow that instruction to continue and finish its job in the cell appropriately. And with the Moderna vaccine, it was 28 days was determined that was the best time to get it in order to get the maximum response from the entire vaccine sequence. And so one of the things that people need to realize, however, is that it takes that second shot and about 2 weeks after that for your body to develop full immunity. Much like with the flu shot, it takes 2 weeks before you develop the antibodies needed to fight off the illness. So if you get the shot, 2 days later you get the flu. A lot of people said, I got the flu from the shot. You didn't. What you did is got exposed to the flu before your shot took full effect of immunity. It's the same with this vaccine. What you have is your first dose that gives the first set of instructions to the cell. The cell starts to create what it needs to create to determine how to fight off and create the antibodies and strengthen your T cells. And then as you go through, you develop about an 80% immunity that first 2 weeks after you get the first shot. And then the booster shot will get you the rest of the way to your immunity from that point. But it still takes 2 weeks. So it's a total of 6 weeks before you develop 100% of the immunity that it will give you. That they say it's about 96%.
So you do get some
Both
immunity
shots.
from the first
Let's
shot.
get both. Let's get that straight.
Yes.
Now we've talked over each other.
So,
Yeah.
thanks, same question though.
Yeah, same question.
I don't know if that was too much information for that one question, but there you go.
But so just to kind of sum up, the one shot does give you some resistance after 2 weeks, but that booster shot after the 28 days with the Moderna vaccine, that's what gives you that almost full complete immunity.
Yes.
And it still takes 2 weeks after the second one, right?
Yes, yes. And
Okay.
you really need to get that shot on time, if at all possible, because that's when it's most effective, according to the trials, and that's what you need to do, is follow those instructions.
Is that the same for the Pfizer? Like the first shot, you only get like partial immunity and it takes that second?
Yes,
Works the
ma'am.
same way? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So it's like it takes 2 to complete the whole sequence.
Are we going to have both vaccines here in Ohio County? Or I know currently, I think we've just been offering the Moderna to our healthcare providers so far, but do we expect to get any of the Pfizer vaccine?
We don't expect that anytime soon. I think, and eventually we will have several vaccines to choose from as more vaccines are developed, tried, and are allowed to have an emergency use. What we do have here in our area is Moderna because of the storage. Basically, more rural areas are the ones that are going to get the Moderna, and it's easier to store. I'm not sure of the facilities that have the equipment to store Pfizer for a long period of time here. I'm sure there are some that are equipped if need be. So they're kind of parceling out the vaccines according to what makes more sense for where they go. And it's not that one is more effective than another. They're both pretty good from what we've seen in trials. But I think eventually you'll have a choice of what you get. It'll be in the next years or so, you'll be able to go to the doctor and get the vaccine that you feel most comfortable. There's several being tried now. Johnson & Johnson, I think, is getting ready to release one of theirs. So
I'd like to kind of follow up with what you just said on that. So is this going to be like a flu vaccine where every year we're going to have to jump back in and get another COVID vaccine, or?
Don't know that yet. They are going to have to follow the people in the trials to find out how long the immunity lasts. We have to see what happens with this virus. This is not something that is textbook. You can't go to a book and figure out what the next step is going to be. It's kind of writing itself as it goes along. There's so many variants to this. So we have got to just look at the data as it comes in, follow these trials as they're going. and see how long the efficacy of this vaccine actually works. The way we do that is to get the vaccine and see how long we stay immune. And then at that point, they'll let us know if we're going to have to get it every 3 years, if we know that the strain is mutating a little bit, but that's happened with other viruses. It's happened with a lot of coronaviruses, with the cold vaccines. The cold viruses, and with the flu vaccines. You're going to have to get them because there's multiple strains of those that come out. So this vaccine covers all the strains that are out at this point that they know of. And as the virus continues to evolve, so will our knowledge. We just have to just keep the data and look at it and determine what the next step is as we go.
Okay, I have a question, and we'll try, antibodies is what I want to ask about, because do the antibodies give you any kind of immunity, or for how long, if you've had it?
There's quite a bit of studies on that. I think that probably before we get any real factual answers, it's going to probably be 3 to 4 years of research on this before we're going to be able to say for certain what this answer is and what that answer is. That's the way it is with most any type of disease process. It takes quite a while to study to get all that determined. What we do, though, is operate on theories based on the information that we do have. Antibodies has been questionable with a lot of people. Should I get an antibody test? Does that mean I'm immune? Not mean I'm immune. What they found is that about 5% of the population don't develop antibodies at all. And so the ones that don't develop antibodies and have not been symptomatic or have had less exposure, most of their immunity comes from their T cell reaction. And then you have the ones that do develop antibodies. And if you have antibodies, that does mean that you have been exposed to the virus at some point, and your body has kind of kicked in an immune response to that and built a little bit of a defense against it. How long this lasts is still yet to be determined, because they had originally come out saying that it was a 3-month immunity for the natural virus when you got it. And then they felt that you could get re-exposed and then get the coronavirus again and be infectious again. But the later studies that have come out, the last ones that I've seen, that has said that most immunity lasts 6 months or longer. However, the antibodies are weak enough after 3 months that if you've had COVID, then you can get the vaccine 3 months after you've had COVID, and it will not affect the vaccine. So.
We've had a couple of comments here from viewers, and in fact, one of our viewers is apparently scheduled to get a vaccine tomorrow. So she kind of wants to know, what reactions to plan for. Does she need to take some Tylenol ahead of time? What have you seen primarily?
Very good. Okay, so I would suggest you take some Tylenol before you get the vaccine, and then 4 hours later, so that you're taking that for soreness in your arm. That's been the biggest reaction that we have seen, and that is the most common reaction, is soreness of the injection site and possibly redness in that area. And that can travel all the way down your arm. It can travel up into your shoulder. Some people are a little bit more sensitive than other people are. And we've had varying responses from the people that we vaccinated. We follow up with everybody, because if there is reactions, we have to record that. And the other reactions that are fairly common, about 25% of the people who have received this vaccine get mild COVID responses, which means that they'll have maybe a low-grade temperature. They might feel a little bit of chills, might even get a little bit of a sore throat for about 24 to 72 hours max. We tell people when we give them the vaccine, make sure that if you have these mild symptoms and it's lasting past 3 or 4 days, go see your provider, because it may be that you were exposed to COVID before you came in and got the vaccine. And this might not be a response to the vaccine. It may be actual COVID. So In trials, the longest it lasted was 72 hours. We have not seen any serious reactions to anyone that we have given vaccines to here, and nationwide, we're kind of watching that as they come out. There was the one anaphylaxis of the oncologist who received the vaccine. He was allergic to shellfish. That doesn't seem to be a trigger for anaphylaxis. So whether it was the vaccine, something in the vaccine, or something that he had seen or been in contact with earlier, but it has been put down as an anaphylactic reaction to the vaccine. He gave himself an epi shot. He carried his own EpiPen, was seen in the ER and treated and then released, and he's doing fine. So,
Was it local?
No, it was in Alaska.
Okay.
So
Another
we
no
have,
major
question-
reactions locally?
not to the vaccine, no. We've had people that have reactions to the needles, but not to the actual vaccine that we've seen. That's been, it has varied. There has been some people who have had some COVID-like symptoms, but not enough to call into work or to stop their daily activities.
Another question we had from one of our viewers was she's anticipating getting the vaccine at some point. Her parents are older, and she's definitely wanting to protect them and protect the rest of her family. But she's concerned about how are we going to know when it's our turn? I mean, when do you find out? Okay, this is your time, and we've got a vaccine ready for you. Is it something you need to call about when you think you might be in the right group, or how do we know?
Well, I'm going to give you a simple answer for Ohio County. Okay, this is going to be really simple. Keep watching our website and Facebook, because as soon as information comes along, that's going to be posted on there immediately. We do have plans to continue our next phase. We've already started vaccinating our community partners within the area. The next phase are going to be the 70 and older. Will be who they're going to be rolling out next. As soon as the state tells us that we can do that, we're going to get that done. Now, what we are doing is we're establishing a phone line, and that will be up and going next week, where people who want the vaccine, even before it's time for them to get it, can call in and kind of get themselves scheduled. And then when we do get the rollout, that schedule booked, and we can say, okay, now you can come in at this time. So it will be a simple process. Hopefully, once we get it rolled out, all that information will be coming out within this week or next week on our Facebook page and our website. So that's ochcares.com. And just keep watching that, and we will also get it out to the community as soon as possible. We're making individual phone calls to places and people to make sure that we're getting everything covered, but that's the easiest way to do it. If you don't hear anything or you don't see anything, we haven't gotten the green light. We don't have the go-ahead yet. So all that information will be on there, and then you can, if you have any questions, there will be a number posted that you can call, and we can answer those questions.
We're seeing a lot of things, especially in social media and on the news, where seniors, especially, and others are getting targeted in scams, saying pay so much here and you can sign up for the COVID vaccine. Is the vaccine going to cost anything?
No, the vaccine does not cost the public anything at all. So if somebody's asking you to pay for the vaccine, now what we do have been told is that people can charge an administration fee, and that's probably for people's time and for supplies and things that are used. So there is a nominal administration fee that is covered 100% by your insurance. So especially the elderly nobody should be asking them for money at this point.
How much does an administration fee typically run?
It's for what we received. We just received that, I believe, last week. And our from the first shot, it's $45, and the second shot, it's $65.
But that's not paid by the recipient. The insurance companies pay that.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's to
Gotcha.
cover the cost. That's to cover the cost of the staff and the supplies and the things in order to give those those shots.
But they're not going to have to bring out their paycheck, or I mean their checkbook or anything when they come to get the vaccine. That's all covered.
No. And if somebody is calling you and telling you you need to pay and come and get your COVID vaccine, especially in the state of Kentucky, these vaccines are very closely monitored right now. We have to send in reports. We have 24 hours to report when we give a vaccine from the time we give that vaccine to register that vaccine that it's given. So they're monitoring the numbers very, very closely, and they're not. You don't have anybody out there that's that got a big shipment of vaccine saying, "Hey, come on over here and I'll give you a vaccine for this much money," because there's just not every vaccine is accounted for. Everybody knows where it is, and we have that schedule to go by.
So just to clear that up, then, Ohio County Hospital is not hoarding any vaccine. You all are administering it on the fair time schedule.
We are trying to get it out as fast as we can. Actually, there are some people who would be very, very happy if we gave the last dose today, because we do. We want to get it out there to the public. I don't know. I just heard that for the first time today, that Ohio County is hoarding some vaccine. That may have come there. That might have been a rumor for when the vaccine first came out. I told you that you had to have 2 doses, and you have to have the second one timed from the first one in 28 days. When we first received our vaccine shipment, we were not told if that was both doses together or just the initial dose at that time. So we said we were going to hold back the second dose, and that way we gave half of it, and we had the other half for the second dose to cover those people until we got another shot, because that was very important that those boosters were there. And it was clarified probably about 4 days later, because a lot of hospitals were doing that across the state. And Dr. Stack came out and sent a message that they had been assured that the shipments that were sent were just the initial dose, and that we would receive the second dose, that at the factory they were holding out the second dose for us, and they have those waiting for us. So once it's time to give those boosters, we just let them know, and those doses will be shipped to us. So that may have been where that was started, that second dose was held back, but that was only the first day of our vaccines. We hadn't even gotten close to giving out half of those vaccines when we found out that we could give them all out. And we actually ordered additional vaccine so that we could cover all of our community partners. So believe me, if we have vaccine, if we can give it to somebody, we're going to be giving it to somebody as quickly
So not
as
wasting.
Not wasting. No.
What would be your advice to somebody that is hesitant to take it, or they say, I don't know if I want to take, the vaccine? What would you say to them?
It's and I've said it several times, because we've had that over and over again. And so we do a lot of vaccine education, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. And so, I like to talk to people and find out what it is that's causing the concern. And many times I find it's because people think that this is a new vaccine and it's never been tried before, and they rushed up their trials and they skipped over safety methods to get it out here to us. And none of that is true, actually. This vaccine has been in development since 2012, when SARS came out. They started working on a coronavirus vaccine. There was a vaccine that was ready to go to human trials in 2017, but the epidemiologist, who was also a children's oncologist, pediatric oncologist, did not receive the funding to take it to human trials, because at that time, coronavirus had kind of died down and it wasn't a big thing on anybody's radar. So he didn't get funding to do that. So all of that research on this particular virus was already there as a building block. And it's this particular strain, which we know we can modify vaccines to handle different strains if we know what the virus genome is. And so that was already taken care of. And then the other part is the messenger RNA. And that is this is a new vaccine using this particular mechanism of action, but it's not newly developed. It's been in the works for 10 years, and they have been looking at creating vaccines for several different diseases with this mechanism of action. And it just so happened, and they've been using it for cancer patients, for chemo patients. And so this was an opportune time to put those two research projects together that has been going on for years and years and years, because with this vaccine, you can develop it very quickly and get it out to people much quicker than you can using one with attenuated virus. And so they were able to do that. And instead of skipping over phases of trials, what they did was allowed all the phases of trials to be done simultaneously. So instead of going and saying, okay, you can only do a human trial for 10,000 people, and it can only be one ethnic group, and then you have to give us the study for that. We'll look over it, and then you can go to the next phase. They were able to expand who they were able to trial and expand their numbers of trials, and they did that all in a linear line instead of waiting and doing it in steps. And so it didn't take away any of the safety in developing the vaccine. It just made it happen a lot quicker because of our situation.
So going back to the messenger RNA format that this vaccine is, a lot of vaccines I know are actually dead virus cells that they use and to build up immunity. So with this messenger RNA vaccine, it can't give you COVID, correct?
No, and you don't actually get a dead virus like you would attenuated virus vaccine development, which can't give you the virus either because it can't replicate in your body. What this does is use protein of the virus. It's protein strands and it's RNA strands, and they develop it, and it's a very small portion of that just gives a blueprint. That, like I said, it goes into the cell, the mitochondria of the cell, and it's like somebody shipping instructions to a builder, and then they take that and use that as a building block.
So
that's what
Sam brought up a good point. Like, people who are hesitant, what would you say to them? How many people are walking around right now in Ohio County with this vaccine with no major reactions?
Well, right now, I just got numbers because CC was kind enough to give me numbers before this. We have vaccinated 223 of our employees and 113 health partners in our community. So that's 336 people so far.
In our community, and no major reactions.
No major reactions.
So over 330 people walking around out here with at least one dose of the COVID vaccine, doing really well so far.
And I'm one of them. I got it the first day.
Right.
Yeah, I wasn't scheduled to get it the first day, but we had a dose that we did not want to throw away, and we asked everybody to get it. And even though I was in the 1A group, I was going to wait until a lot more of my staff was able to get it, but we didn't want to throw it away, so I went ahead and took it, and it kind of was good because that way I could give personal information to my staff when they were asking, because we had some people who are hesitant and said, well, I've heard this, and I said, well, I got it, and this is what happened with me, and that has helped.
And I've heard that too, like with this, some people I know that there's like, oh, well, why is administration or billing or something like that getting it? And the biggest thing is, my understanding, you don't want to throw any away. Is that right?
Well, and not only that, but that, we initially thought that we were going to be using the emergency plan for distribution, but it's not. And so the direction we got from the state was everybody that was in that phase 1A is anybody who works in healthcare, regardless of their job, because they are in not only the locations of where the patients are, but because their job is vital to keep healthcare running for the patients. So it didn't matter if you were an office worker, it didn't matter if you were a housekeeper, it didn't matter if you were in maintenance. If you worked in a healthcare facility, taking care of patients, even if you worked in finance, you fell into that group. And so our directive from the state was vaccinate everybody on an equal basis that works in your facility. So we did get some concern because people were saying, I don't understand why the secretary got it over the ER doc. It wasn't anybody getting it over anybody else. Everybody fell in that group. And what we did was put out a schedule for people to come at their convenience, but not only at their convenience, we had to look at taking care of our patients and our staff. You know, we at this point knew that you could have 25% people that had a reaction. So is what happened was we wanted to stagger our staff so that not everybody, if they got a reaction, was getting it at the same time in one department. So we had so many doctors to get it on the first day, so many nurses to get it, so many in every department. But you don't want everybody in that department getting it all at the same time. So, and that's what most hospitals did. And there were directives sent out from the state before vaccines were even given out that were toolkits. And that was mentioned in the toolkit too, is make sure you're looking at staffing, make sure that if, especially with the second shot, because the second shot has a little bit more reaction than the first shot does, because your body's already built up that immune system, that immune response, and so it reacts to the vaccine, which is what it's supposed to do. But if you get 5 people calling in at work because they all got vaccinated the same day and they're going to be out for a couple of days because they're running a slight temperature, and we don't let them come to work if they're running a temperature because vaccine COVID, you know, then that's going to put you in a bind when it comes to patient care. So we couldn't vaccinate everybody all at once at the same time in our healthcare facility.
What would be, say I get the shot and, you know, where's PPE factor into this? Are people going to get the shot and say, oh, I don't have to wear a mask anymore, I don't have to distance? I know there's going to be some confusion there, people not understanding.
There is, and it is going to be confusing, and I understand the confusion. They are asking that people continue to wear masks. There's a lot of reasons for that. First off is we know that it's going to take 6 weeks to develop the full immunity, and that's at best. I mean, your physiology may delay that a little bit, so you're looking 6 to 8 weeks to develop full immunity. We know that people are getting staggered in taking their vaccines. We know that we have several groups of people taking their vaccines. So we still want to protect our community. When you wear a mask, by the way, you're protecting other people. And so it is the people that are at risk, that haven't had the vaccine yet, that are in the community, that you want to still continue to protect. So you do all the measures possible until they say, you know, we look like we've got enough herd immunity that we can remove some of these measures. Another reason for that is we have a large population of people and that feel like, you know, that they don't want to wear masks. And if they don't get vaccinated and they're not wearing their mask, you can't tell if somebody has been vaccinated and not wearing their mask. There's no way to tell that in the general population. And so if we say that everybody really needs to wear your mask, then that way you're protecting your community against people who are not going to get vaccinated and still may have COVID and can carry it. And that way we know that everybody is safe and protected. So it's kind of a community thing to make sure that we get enough immunity within the communities to be able to safely remove our masks so that everybody can go about their business normally.
Do we know yet, though, if you get the vaccine, whether or not you could still give COVID to someone else?
No, you would not. I mean, if you got the vaccine, like I said, no vaccine is 100% effective. We're still talking 84, 86% effectiveness for this vaccine. You develop immunity just like you would if you got the disease naturally, and then you wouldn't have the live virus in your system, and you wouldn't be able to spread that to anybody else. We have had some of our staff and some of the EMS who were the earlier ones who got the vaccination that had some blood drawn, and I got a report back that they had already shown antibodies in their blood. And so that was pretty good. It's been a couple of weeks. They're about another week out from their booster shot, another week or two out, and they're already showing some immunity to it. So that's a positive for us.
Moving that quickly. Yeah, that's positive for all of us.
Yes, absolutely.
Are there groups of people though, like, so obviously you're encouraging people to get the vaccine, I think
Yes.
is what it
Yes.
sounds like. Are there
Yes.
groups of people though that shouldn't? Like if you're pregnant or if you're already have like some treatment for another disease or like cancer treatments or anything like that, should there be concern?
Well, what the CDC has put out for the trials is, as far as not getting the vaccine, if you have had a severe reaction, which is usually anaphylaxis, to an injectable medication before, you really need to speak to your primary care provider. If you have any concern about your medical condition or your lack of immunity, if you're an autoimmune deficient person, you need to speak to your provider. Otherwise, even if you have allergies to pets or other food allergies or medication allergies, it's been pretty safe to take, and they haven't had any reactions with that, and they're recommending that you do take the vaccine with those. Pregnant women and breastfeeding women, both the AMA and obstetricians have come out stating that they support the findings, that there is no reason not to get the vaccine. There's no evidence that this is going to harm any woman's child or any harm to any type of fertility. Like I said, this has been researched for 10 years, this messenger RNA mechanism of action. And it does not enter into the DNA of the cell. It only stays in the mitochondria. That protein does its job and then it dies off, and then you have a blueprint for this virus to be able to fight it. And there has not been any evidence that this is going to affect any of those people at all. So right now, even the obstetricians are backing going ahead and getting the vaccine if you're pregnant, just like if you have the flu, because the damage that could be caused from the COVID virus is much worse than anything that they've seen from the vaccine. There just hasn't been any evidence that there's going to be any problems.
Feed's a little slow, sorry. Guys, do you all have any concerns about getting the vaccine? I know, like, we're yay vaccine in my household, so I don't know.
I want to get it. I do have an autoimmune issue. I'm on Humira, for example, but I'm going to talk to my doctor about it because that was my first concern with myself, is if it'd be okay to take, and take it from there. Otherwise, I do want to take it as soon as I can.
We have had some people who have had some issues or have had some chemotherapy in the past, those types of things, and they have spoken to their physician and they've taken the vaccine and they haven't had any problem to this point. We had a gentleman who had a reaction to another vaccine, and he did not want to take the vaccine, and of course we're not going to force that on him at all, but he decided to go ahead and give it a try. He researched everything, and he took the vaccine and has not had any problem at all. He's had it for over a week now. Didn't cause any issues. Just a sore arm. You will have a
I
sore
have
arm.
a sort of off the wall question maybe about this. I had a flu shot. I don't know how many other people got a flu shot back in September, October. I had read that there's studies being done that if you had a flu shot, that maybe you would not get severely ill if you had COVID. Is there any?
I don't think there's any factual studies. There's not any.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think there are.
Factual
Yeah.
studies. I don't think that there is any hard evidence of that at this point. When you look at research, you have to look at where it comes from and if it's been peer reviewed and if it's double blind studies and things like that. what they can do is take anecdotal information at this point and again create a theory. And there's been all kinds of articles out about, this is shown to be linked to this, and this has been shown to be linked to that. But there's not a lot of evidence to study that at this point. The two viruses are not really that similar linked. I mean, the coronavirus is the cause for the common cold. So, that's in the same family with the cold, not necessarily the flu. Influenza is a separate virus. It could
Now,
be.
also, though, I'm sorry, I interrupted her.
I was just going to say it could be that
No,
people.
now, if you've had a flu shot, though, I mean, you're helping hospitals out.
Oh,
Absolutely, for not having because they take care of flu cases, and I know flu cases went down in the last year, or that we started observing this.
Well, and basically because honestly, if people there is a thing as co-infection, and are people who have both the flu and COVID, and if they test for COVID, they stop there. They're not going to test for the flu. So there's probably a lot more cases of flu out there than people are realizing, but there's also probably a lot of co-infections that are out there as well. And so they're going to treat the one that has been shown to have the most significant response. And so you still treat patient symptoms and do what you need to do for that patient. Flu, I'm glad you brought that up, because that is another, infection control that we in the healthcare system has been fighting for a long time to get people to understand. And people say, well, why take it if it's only 50% effective or 60% effective? The thing about flu is you have multiple strains that come through annually, and you can only vaccinate in one vaccine for a few of those strains. You can't cover everything. So if you miss that, that's what the flu misses. And so that's why you would get the flu if you got the flu shot. But if you think about it, even if, and I think the worst it has been is about a 60% effective rate. But if you think about it, if 100 people took the vaccine and it was only 60% effective, that's 60 people who's not passing the flu on to anybody else. Now, if those 60 people decided, hey, it's only 60% effective, I'll just take my chances. So that drops your infection control rate down to 30 people, because 30 people who could have had it and could have been covered said, I'm not going to do it. So every time you say you don't do it because, it may hit me or it may not, then you're increasing the odds of that spreading, because 60% is better than 0%. And if you can stop at 60%, then stop at 60%.
We did have another question from some viewers, is if you've had COVID, can you get the vaccine, and how soon after you recover from COVID can you get it?
Yes, you can, but it will be 3 months after you have finished your last symptoms. And the reason for that is because your body has already started an immune response to the coronavirus because you've had it. So it's developing a response to attack anything that looks like coronavirus. If you get any type of vaccine, then your body, if it's in that response mode, is going to keep that vaccine from doing its job and being effective, because it will attack the vaccine. So the reason you do not want to get the coronavirus shot until 3 months afterwards is so that the vaccine will be effective when you get it. So wait 3 months. Studies have shown that's when the antibodies that you develop naturally are weak enough that it will not attack the vaccine and keep it from doing its job.
Along those same lines, have you heard from anybody that might say, well, I've already had it, so I guess I'm good now. No need to take the vaccine. Have you had that kind of response?
More people who have had it have asked for it because they said, I've had it,
so.
and I've had it again.
Right. But some think they can't get it a second time, and there's just a lot of misinformation.
There's a lot of misinformation. If you've had it, you do develop an immune response for a certain amount of time. We do know that that is a time limited response. I can't tell you for sure exactly how much time it is because those studies are still ongoing. Again, it initially was 3 months, and now they've pushed it back to about 6 months, depending on some studies. Again, there are different studies, and it's going to take a while to get all of these studies and all the research to develop a true answer. But it's still a very limited immune response compared to what they feel the vaccine will be. With monkey trials for the SARS vaccine, back when they did SARS, when they were trying to develop the SARS vaccine, they had documented an immunity of up to 3 years in some of the monkeys. So we don't know if we're going to have that type of immunity with this. We don't know if it's going to be that successful or not. The hope is that it will. And but we have to follow these trial studies, and we have to follow these patients. Right now, studies have shown that the initial patients in the trials have been tested, and all of them still have antibodies for the vaccine. They don't have anybody that I'm aware of that I've seen in the studies that has that they said was affected by this vaccine positively with antibodies. They are still showing signs of immunity, and that was 8 months ago.
That's very comforting.
Encouraging.
Yeah. I mean, I've learned a lot. I've gotten some questions answered tonight. I know we really appreciate this, Athena. I think there's a lot of people, there's a lot of questions, there's a lot of skepticism, a lot of worries, and a lot of fear. But I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but it sounds to me like the hospital, our local healthcare providers are encouraging people as soon as they can to get this vaccine.
Absolutely. And there is a lot of skepticism, there is a lot of fear, and I understand when you have something new is always a little bit scary. But the typhoid vaccine was new at one time, polio vaccine was new at one time. I mean, we have to look at what the risks are for not doing it. And we have really got some good data to show that this is a very safe and effective vaccine. So if you are on the fence about taking this vaccine, of course, do your research, but make sure when you're looking at information that you are using valid sources of information. You're not looking on Facebook and listening to what people are saying. You're not looking at blogs. You're not looking at opinion statements. Look at the science, look at the data, look at the numbers and the actual facts before you make up your mind not to take the vaccine, because it may be something you regret later on. So, but yes, please do. We are going to try to get this vaccine pushed out to everybody who can take it as quickly as possible, and we're going to do our part to do that. So please keep watching, looking at that Facebook page, look at the website for the information. And when your group comes along and it's time that your group that you fall into get it, then we will make sure we publicize the heck out of that and let you know where to go and how to get there. And if you need us to come and pick you up, give us a call. We'll do whatever we need. But you also want to make sure that just if you're disseminating information, if you're talking to people, make sure that what you're saying is accurate too, because you may influence somebody from your opinion to make a decision that may mean their life. So, that's something you need to think about as well.
So pay attention to Ohio County Healthcare website, your Facebook page, and I'm assuming then the timetable for the distribution of these vaccines, the public will know as soon as you know if we pay attention to the site.
Exactly. Okay. And it's all about the distribution. It's when we get the first wave done to a point where we feel like that first group is vaccinated enough, or there's enough vaccines to cover that group, they'll roll out the second one as soon as they possibly can. And so we're going to try to do it back to back as much as possible.
And you're ready to unload this stuff.
Ready to unload it. We are not holding back anything. I promise you. I promise you, everybody's ready to have this vaccine given out to we all want to get back to normal too. I mean, good gracious, look at the field of what we do every day. We would like to see this thing go away.
Right.
Well, Athena, I appreciate everything that you've come in, taken up your evening time to talk to us tonight. I think it's been great. We won't keep you any longer. I think we're going to stick around and discuss some of today's events at the Capitol building in DC. But thank
so
you.
much for having me.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Okay, so
All right,
get
so
vaccinated.
that was a ton of information. That was
It really
excellent.
was.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, we'll keep all our episodes up. You can watch this again. I mean, it was a lot, but it was a
I think
lot
I'll
of good
watch it
stuff.
again. You know.
Yeah.
Well, and I really appreciate how educated Athena is on the subject, and
Yeah.
she's obviously
Yes,
studied this
absolutely.
and read up on it a lot. And yeah, that was great. I think it's wonderful that we have a resource like that right here in our own community.
I think that's so
For sure.
important in things like this. A lot of times it's so easy, as we're seeing the effects of social media and of rhetoric that gets put out, when we don't pay attention to what the source is and where you're getting your information from. It's so easy to see things on Facebook or Twitter or wherever and to take it as truth. And I've seen lots of things about this vaccine that are not at all what she said. And obviously she knows what she's talking about. She's a healthcare provider and she's done her research. And, you know, it's refreshing to hear that. And hopefully we can continue to push out truthful and correct information, especially regarding the vaccine. It's so important.
Speaking of Twitter,
Were we
So what do we
speaking
know?
of Twitter?
What
Well,
is happening
switching
right now
gears.
in DC?
yeah, DC and
So for those of you
it
who've
was-
lived under a rock for the last 8 hours,
Yeah.
protesters who were protesting, I believe, the Electoral College certification of President-elect Biden stormed our Capitol building in Washington, D.C., and took over the Senate and House chambers, as well as several members of Congress' personal offices. And at least one person, I believe, was shot and have perished, unfortunately.
She's died. Yeah.
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 So, you know, okay, y'all know my thoughts. What are your thoughts on this?
it was
This is the absolute craziest thing I've seen in a while.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was
And
glued
maybe
to the TV.
concerning people who protest all the time in Washington, because it happens all the time.
Right.
This was over the edge, and I've never seen it. I think I heard a commentator say today the last time that maybe there was an uprising similar to that was the War of 1812.
A little while.
It
Which
was
was
surreal.
a long time ago.
Long time ago.
Because I would have expected
Couple hundred years.
we were being invaded. But it was us doing it. Well, the American public doing it.
Well,
Certainly.
Right.
I'm going to kind of play a little bit of devil's advocate here. When it first happened, you know, my whole thing was initially, I'm like, you know what? It's not like it's some kind of shrine that we keep people out of. The Capitol building is owned by American people, right? Like this is
Sure.
our tax dollars pay for it. They work for us.
Public
You know,
building.
I'm not a big fan of keeping people out. But when you storm past Capitol Police, when you're armed in DC of all places where you're not even supposed to be armed anyway, when someone gets shot, when you're breaking windows, when you're, you know, everybody's talking about in comparisons to the Black Lives Matter protests and things like that. And, you know, I can understand anger from a position where you feel like maybe something happened or your candidate didn't win. I can understand anger. I get that. But the violence and the threats and the looting and just the disruption of trying to carry out a democratic purpose. I mean, quite frankly, this is as close to an insurrection, I guess, sedition that we've seen in our lifetimes of a
And
serious.
they didn't even they got into what debate for how long? Not even 15 minutes or 20
Yeah.
minutes, and this happened.
Right.
It just seemed like it was the intent when everyone showed up, and it's kind of scary when you think about it. What's happening in our world right now? I mean, and then President Trump goes on Twitter and he presents this video where it's not so much about how this is, you know, this needs to stop or this needs to calm down, he's fueling the flame, saying, "Oh, they stole the election," when there's not been any proof. Like you can feel how you want to feel. That's whether you feel like it was a fair election or not. I can't judge your feelings, but there's been zero proof. Over 60 lawsuits are filed. None of them have gone anywhere. There's the only evidence they've seen of voter fraud happen to be people who voted for President Trump. So it's not really going anywhere, and yet it's culminated and erupted into this. And I feel like I think our leadership in our country really needs to take a step back and figure out how could they have helped prevent this.
He was there they were hoping he would disarm the situation. He didn't do that. It's kind of like that fake apology type thing. And now I see that he's been banned from posting for 12 hours.
It's not long enough.
No, but it's
No.
It's also weird.
It's the beginning of the end in some senses.
Do you think, because somebody mentioned it on the news, and do you think this is the end of something or the beginning of something?
Probably both.
Kind of both, probably.
Yeah. I don't know, and I'll turn here, like, and not discrediting Sam and Aaron in your professions. Obviously, from a news standpoint, you see a lot. From my standpoint, from a legal standpoint, Emily, you deal a lot with federal security clearances and the FAA. How does this affect things like on your end, because you deal primarily with federal infrastructure every day?
Yeah, to some degree. I mean, at a smaller airport, obviously, we don't have the TSA agents and things like that, on a daily basis that you would see at a larger airport. But it definitely is one of those things that honestly we'll have to see. I'm not sure. There's not been a lot handed down, or I've not seen any changes yet. But it'll be interesting to see how this plays out and how everything goes moving forward. I do think it's just one of those things where, everyone obviously has different opinions about a lot of things, and we should respect different opinions as Americans. I mean, that's part of the greatness of our country, is that we don't all have to believe the same thing. We don't all have to think exactly the same way, but, there has to be a sense of civility and a sense of, I don't even know another word to choose. The opposite of what happened today.
Civility sums it up.
There's different ways they could have approached it. And
sure.
And again, I understand the anger. I understand the frustration where you see a lot of people like, well, how could Biden have won? Because there's so many more Trump signs, right? And Trump supporters seem to be so much more vocal and everything like that. But unfortunately, you don't, every time how you cast your vote, you're not required to go out and shout from a rooftop how you voted. That's just not how it works.
I think that's
they count the votes.
That's the social media aspect of it, though. I mean,
world.
We didn't used to do that. No one used to do that. I mean, they might put a sign in their front yard, candidate or something to that effect, 20 years ago. But now everybody knows everything. Right. Yeah. I didn't know who my parents voted for when I was young. As I got older, and probably could have maybe guessed some of their, political ideologies, but as a child, I certainly never knew that. It wasn't something that was talked about necessarily. We talked about voting and the electoral process, but, hearing their personal views didn't always happen. Obviously for a young child, that probably shouldn't happen, but now kids probably hear it because their parents are watching YouTube videos on it or Facebook videos just passing through the living room.
I can't imagine being a kid watching this today.
It's scary in a way.
It disturbed me at my age, but.
Well, and I don't mean to belabor this. Obviously, as I like to think, as the week plays out, we're going to see a little bit more information on what happened today, exactly what maybe instigated, how they were able to get in. That's my concern, is how were they able to breach the Capitol building while Congress is in session? Because as a kid, I remember touring the Capitol, and you stepped off the little red line, but they said you could walk on, and next thing you know, Capitol Police were ushering you out the door, right? So
yeah.
They
Yeah.
they keep saying they were overwhelmed and there was no way to screen anybody, even though they all had backpacks and so forth. Oh, what was I going to say? And also the circumstances around this woman, God bless her, whatever happened to her, what instigated that incident.
You're right. And I think these are all obviously answers that we're going to have to wait to see.
Sure.
But
And we may not know. I mean, some of those things in the middle of a chaotic moment like that, unless someone got it specifically on video, you might not know exactly what happened.
Right.
Well, I am curious, and for those who are watching, I would like to know, what your thoughts on today. How does this affect your opinion of the rollout? Because the election is over. I know that we keep hearing some things, but the election is over, and on January 21st, we're going to have a new president. But these type of reactions, whether it's the reactions now that we're seeing today, the protests over some of the other things that we've seen throughout the past year, I do believe in civil disobedience. I do believe in the right to assemble. I believe that you have the right to protest. I do believe all that. I may not agree with your opinion, but I will, I will obviously support that right. That's what we do. But I think there's a line, and I wonder if today we didn't severely cross it, because the idea of sedition and insurrection, and these are words that are being brought up a lot lately. And if you're not familiar with them, Google's real simple to use.
Look them up.
Yeah, but I mean, I think we're getting there. I think there's enough rumbling now where it's an obvious concern.
I think we heard from, I know the local news I was watching at work today, they had both Brett Guthrie and James Comer on, who are both Republican representatives from Kentucky. And, they both obviously renounced what happened today, and being inside and being part of it, during the lockdown and all of that. I'm sure it was pretty scary not knowing exactly what was going on. They weren't on Twitter watching it like we were. Maybe they were, I don't know. But anyway, so it's, obviously it was something that is not something to be praised or celebrated from that standpoint, considering I think most of our lawmakers from both sides of the aisle are saying, this isn't going to help anything. It's not
going to change the
purposeful.
outcome at all.
Right.
No, I hope people don't forget this. Now, in a couple of days, it could die down, but I hope this really does stick in people's minds, and they don't, just say, "Well, I guess that was a thing, wasn't it?" And it was a thing, all right, but it is. I hope they don't forget the severity of it.
Yeah. And I see a message here from Corey Hamlet. Hardly anyone was wearing a mask. I mean, again, we are in the middle of a pandemic, right?
Yeah. Now we could have a surge in cases coming up.
But I guess that'll help identify the perpetrators later, perhaps. But
yeah.
Probably not, though, because what's going to happen is that, I assume there were people there today from everywhere in our country.
From everywhere.
Everywhere. So they all congregated, and then they're all going to go home and take it back to their communities. You have to assume a few people in that large crowd had COVID and weren't wearing a mask. So that's just statistics. But anyways, hopefully, they're obviously no one wants any more death or destruction or injury or anything further than what already took place. So hopefully we can move past it, learn from it, and come together as a nation.
Oh, this, we are mainly local, but obviously this affects us all, even on the local level, when things like this happen. So let us know your thoughts. Somebody said,
"Sure,
I'm grateful it wasn't competently planned and executed." Well, if it was, we'd surely be even a bigger mess than we were today. So,
there would have been, again, people getting in the building with whatever they had in their packages and all that, because they have to clear that entire building. That could the going back to actually vote may take a couple of days now at this point.
And
or counting the votes.
I did read earlier that they were back. I don't know if they were maybe moved.
I don't know. I haven't had the news on since
we've been
doing
this. I know they intended to try to pick it up later tonight, and
Well, that's probably a good point for us to, I guess, sign off on. Is let's go check the news. Let's see what's happened.
Check the news. See what happened.
The past hour while we're learning about the COVID vaccine. See what's going on with our nation. And hope we wake up tomorrow.
turn off the news and spend time with
Right.
your family and go to
Turn
bed.
off the news for sure.
Yeah, and
It's
you know,
hard
and
not
don't
to let
forget,
it all be all consuming, but
right.
that's
And I think
what got us into this mess, I think.
And I think that, you know, that brings up a point that was not to be all consuming. But again, there were a lot of people there, as you both mentioned. There are people from here there. There are people from Ohio County that traveled to DC. Now, I'm not saying that they were part of the ones that stormed the Capitol, but there are people that,
Definitely not.
you know, we work beside, that we know, that we love, that, you know, they support the cause, which again, supporting and, you know, and having an opinion one way or the other is not the issue here. It's the resulting actions that took place.
Right.
So um I'm really curious to see how this is going to play out. I am a little bit sad. I can't say I'm surprised, unfortunately, but I am sad. Um, very upset to see the Confederate flag roaming the halls of our Capitol building. I don't think that, whatever your intentions are, I think the Confederate flag, it certainly gives off only one message in that instance.
I think a lot of people the more people that get involved, there's more that don't really know why they're there. I'm sure there were some people that were just there to be there, or they just didn't get the
Oh,
point.
absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, but yeah, I know whatever the reason is, the message it's sending.
Right.
I don't think any of it's a good message.
No.
And hopefully maybe that we can, if anything's gonna happen from all the polarizing comments and viewpoints that we have in our nation right now, maybe all of us recognizing this went too far, maybe that's something that can draw us back together, hopefully.
Maybe we've reached the breaking point.
And I will say, you know, one thing that I've learned just this week, actually, I had a conversation with a colleague / friend that I run into often, and you know, our political views don't exactly line up, but which is normal for most people. Not everybody doesn't think exactly alike, but you know, we sat down and had an excellent conversation about some things, and it was one of those moments where afterwards we were like, this is what America's missing right now. We're missing that when you sit down across from someone 6 feet apart with a mask on, then you're able to, you know, remember that we have relationships with each other and we're human beings, and I'm sitting across from a human being and I'm not behind a screen or on my phone or whatever. I think we kind of lose humanity sometimes in technology, and it's easier to
Civil
attack.
discourse.
It's easier to yell. It's easier to be mad. It's easier to blame and point fingers and all that. But when you're sitting there talking to a human being and you're saying, okay, well, I see your point, but what about this? And then you actually have discussions. And then at the end of the conversation, you say, you know what, I'd really like to take this discussion further. Let's talk about this another time. That would be great. And then you smile and then you go, you know, talk about other stuff and still have a relationship. And no one was angry and blood pressures weren't raised. And it was one of those moments that just kind of reminded me, this is what we have to get back to.
Yeah.
We can.
And maybe, and as somebody pointed out, Casey says, you know, the length, how where we are from COVID-19 and everything, maybe that's helped bring all these tensions to a head, and it very well may have. But
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
and we saw that this summer too. I mean, there's just been a lot going on, and we got to 2021 and we thought it would all get better. We started out with a bang,
I'm still ticking here.
But we still have to keep putting in the work. We still have to do what we can to try to, you know, you can't control everybody all the time. So we have to do the work that, you know, we want to be able to do to make our community a better place.
Right.
Well, for those who stuck around, thank you. And we'll be back with more episodes of Maine and Local. For right now, each of us in our own separate homes, doing it as socially distant as we can. But
Yeah.
bear with us. I know we have a couple technical glitches every now and then, but we are trying to be safe, and we hope you too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have
Thank
a great
you.
night,
Bye, guys.
Good
See ya.
night.